Welcome to Consumer Adventures. My name is Giorgio Pasqualetto, and in this podcast, I bring you behind the scenes of emerging challenger consumer brands. Today with me, I have Tom Watkins, co-founder at Mighty P. Mighty offers a range of plant-based milk alternatives, which are high in protein and free from any nasties. There's so much I want to ask Tom today, so let's get started with the interview. Welcome, Tom, and thank you for joining me. How are you?
Hi, Georgia. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. So, Tom, I've given away a few information in the intro, but why don't we start by introducing properly your product to our listeners? The main benefits, the main points, the main features, and what makes it amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm obviously the co-founder to Mighty. So we make a range of plant-based milks, primarily with yellow split peas. And I suppose what kind of separates us from other dairy alternatives out there is a few different things, really. Primarily our nutrition. So we have a kind of phrase at Mighty that anything that dairy can do, we can do better. So we have the same protein as cow's milk, for instance, in all our range. We have twice the calcium of cow's milk, and we fortify with things like vitamin D and B12. So kind of a really nutritious, tasty dairy alternative milk.
That's very interesting. And obviously the milk alternative space is booming at the moment. And I find it very interesting that you are focusing on the nutritional aspect as well, where the consumers might have some doubts around, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, typically, in fact, pretty much for all of time since dairy alternative milks have been going, other than soy milk, the majority of plant milks have no protein in them. So things like almond or oat or coconut all have, next to no protein. So nutritionally are pretty poor. And whilst they might taste fantastic, a lot of them are quite high in sugar too. So things like, I won't name any brands, but a super famous oat milk, whilst it tastes delicious, is really high in sugar and quite low in protein. So exactly that. Mighty's kind of, probably started to fill that gap really for, a really delicious tasting but nutritionally smart dairy alternative.
Absolutely. That's such an interesting space to be playing in. And I know that on top of the nutritional side of things, another very important aspect of the product is sustainability. I know, for example, that on your website, the consumers are able to compare your products to dairy products, normal dairy products, on a few sustainability measures. Can you tell us a bit more about what you have been doing around sustainability?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's literally kind of one of the bedrocks of everything we do at Mighty, has a sustainability focus. So we track everything from kind of farm to fork, or I suppose here you'd say kind of farm to glass from, our environmental credentials. And that's tracking everything from our kind of carbon to our water usage, our biodiversity. And we've done this, and we're one of the first kind of brands here in the UK to pilot this, to do a new kind of on-pack score, so an eco score on all of our new packs. We've done that in combination with a company called Mondra, who I think are now transitioning to Foundation Earth, and they've kind of worked with other fantastic brands to do it as well. So, really, really exciting initiative to be part of. And for us and our consumers and just our whole ethos at Mighty, everything we do has to be sustainable. We've kind of said that from day one. So we thought if that's what we believe, let's make sure we stick it on the front of our packs.
Absolutely, that's great. And what I find very interesting about these scores, the eco scores that are coming through the market, is that they really can help the consumer to compare and put environmental credentials in perspective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at the back of a pack and, really, when you buy something from the supermarket nowadays, one of the first things people do is kind of turn the product around and look at the back, kind of look at the fat, the salt, all those things.
Yeah.
But, what you're going to, I would imagine see more and more of is actually people kind of going, well, what are the eco credentials of this product? And it's really interesting with the Mondra piece that we're doing. So fortunately, the whole Mighty range scores an A on the kind of eco credentials, but to kind of give context to that, like a punnet of blueberries would score a C, interestingly, because of the water usage, and something like mince, animal mince, would score an F. So you can kind of see that scale of actually what it takes to get, one of the top grades. It's really interesting.
Very, very interesting. Absolutely. So Tom, in terms of the main ingredient. So pea is quite niche as an ingredient in dairy alternatives. And you started the company in 2019. So I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about how you decided on this ingredient?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of started the company with my brother Nick, who's the other co-founder and business partner, and we don't drink dairy, so both of us are lactose intolerant. And we kind of in the US had tried a pea milk kind of, many years ago. It must have been about 5 years ago or something. And kind of learned about its credentials, learned about its sustainability credentials. And we just couldn't believe that there was nothing like it here, to be honest, in the UK or the EU. There was, at that time, pretty limited with regards to the kind of dairy alternatives that were available. So we said, right, we need to quit our jobs and we need to start selling pea milk. And everyone was, fair enough, said that's absolutely crazy, guys. Don't do that. Like pea milk, that sounds, pretty crazy. But we got to work in Nick's basement trying to, cook up what would be the first iteration. So we kind of got some water and dates and yellow split peas, and it was kind of like a scene out of Breaking Bad.
So you literally made it yourself?
Yeah, we tried to in the first instance, and we quickly learned that it tasted pretty terrible, kind of cooking it in Nick's basement. And actually, we needed some much smarter people and some much better technology and equipment to kind of crack it, which fortunately we've got now.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was curious to ask you, what are your backgrounds? What were you doing before starting Mighty? Were you in the food business, or was it a complete new area, space for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess Nick to start, he was at Asda, so Asda Walmart foods for a number of years, and then he started a food and drink kind of consultancy business that my family have always kind of been in. I was down at Mondelez, so Cadbury's, loads of free chocolate. Fantastic. And then I kind of teamed up with Nick in the food consultancy business we had prior to Mighty. And we did that for, around eight or 10 years of just completely learning about the FMCG trade. I mean, that's always been our experience, dealing with major supermarkets, dealing with food and drink products. So we've always known we were going to do something, but we spent, a number of years trying to figure out what exactly that was going to be. So when we came across pea milk, it was the first time we were like, right, let's dive in off the deep end. We've got to go for this.
That's fantastic. So a lot of very relevant knowledge, a lot of very relevant expertise for this launch. It's amazing. And how long did it take for you guys from going to, we need to start this business, to having the first prototype, the first product ready to launch?
Oh, far too long than I'm prepared to admit. Is the truth. We had to do a number of different iterations. Fortunately, down south in Somerset, we managed to find an absolutely fantastic manufacturing partner who really kind of enlightened us to the world of dairy alternative milks and how you should actually make them, and what's really required to produce for the supermarkets en masse at scale, to a high quality. So it took us a long time. I'd probably say about 18 months for us to be really happy with the product. And it's probably only now today, because we're constantly making refinements, using new bits of technology. So we're constantly kind of innovating our own recipe, is the truth. So, we're never fully satisfied. We're always trying to innovate, but I would say initially, until we're happy, about 18 months.
Absolutely. So, Tom, as a founding team, you had a very strong knowledge and background in food business, especially on the commercial side of things. And currently your products are stocked in some of the major retailers, to give a few names: Tesco, Asda, Morrison's, Ocado, and so on, around 5,000 in total. So my next question for you would be, is there something that you can share with us about how to get stocked at retailers and how to stay stocked as well? I'm mindful, I know that we could do an entire episode just on this, but can you give us a bit of an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, the first thing to say is it's a huge team effort. It's never just certainly not just down to me. I mean, Nick, who is his whole life has been, selling into major retailers, and that was our job. That was the consultants we had before, and then the team we've got here, Sam, who's our head of sales. Like it's a huge team effort, is the truth, to get your products over the line in major retailers. I would say one I guess it's easier once you start to learn about this industry, but one big piece of advice, you'll typically have one retail buyer, for your category, for your product. They must get 10, 20, 30, 40 emails a day from different suppliers wanting, Tesco to list their products. So you need to find ways to stand out, and do that in the right way, not annoy them, but kind of paint a really compelling story to actually, first, they have a fantastic idea and a fantastic product, but secondly, to get their attention, to get some airtime with them, find a way to stand out. And that's kind of something that, fortunately, over the years, we've kind of figured out some decent ways to do.
Are you willing to share something that has really worked?
I can't be giving away all the secrets. Yeah, lots of different things from, it sounds simple, but if you say to a buyer, I'm going to send you some samples, there's a good chance they're going to sit in a mail room for 3 months. But if you put together a really fancy package, if you actually go sometimes as far as to kind of deliver it yourself. I'm not saying you wait outside the retailer head office. I'm definitely not saying that to deliver it to the buyer, but it's, that kind of extreme of I'm going to find out who this buyer is. I'm going to find out a little bit about them. I'm going to make sure that, when I get my chance to be in front of them, I'm going to pitch this product exactly how it needs to be pitched. I'm going to understand the category. I'm going to understand the space we're going to play in and why it's going to be incremental to their category. Your job as a supplier or as a disruptor brand is to firstly excite the buyer, but secondly, make sure you paint a really articulate picture on, why they need to list this product and kind of really paint that clearly to them. I would say that's one of the things that sometimes people get wrong is just to go, my product's great, you need to list it. Well, it's not as simple as that. Try and evidence it, try and provide some, statistics behind it, some category data, all that good stuff to really get the buyer on side. I would say that's absolutely paramount.
Absolutely. And in terms of some next plans you have for the brand, can you tell us something about next activities that you have in mind or next expansions?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. It's like any startup, we're seeing pretty reasonable traction. So, every 6 months here is feeling like 6 years with the pace that we're going at. We launched in Tesco only in January. We're about to kind of double our SKU count there. We've just launched our new plant-based milkshakes there. So we've got a chocolate and a banana one. We're about to launch our barista milk there, which is a brand new kind of barista milk we've made to kind of replicates the flavour of dairy, and it's a PO and coconut cream blend, which is really kind of innovative barista plant milk, but it's got some absolutely fantastic feedback so far. So from that perspective, we're constantly kind of launching new products. I don't know when this is going out, but today we launched in Co-op, so I can definitely reveal that one.
Oh, so, congratulations.
Which is really cool. And there's in Asda as well.
Fantastic.
Which is absolutely fantastic. So, I guess for a brand that's only been around for, a short amount of time, to have kind of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, Co-op, M&S, just, has been pretty cool. It's been a really, really steep learning curve. We've had to scale at quite a pace, but we're just all about innovation. We're building the team up quite quickly. So MPD, disruption, all of that's kind of at the heart of what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, you touched a few very, very interesting points that I want to explore further. The team, the innovation, the MPD. In terms of the team, how many are you guys now? How big is the team? And in terms of the split of responsibilities between yourself and your brother, your co-founder, can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the team by, I think, the end of September will be just short of kind of 20 people. So not a huge team at all. And there are some benefits to that, If you're in a smaller team, it means that everyone's kind of taking ownership of their own kind of thing. It's quite an entrepreneurial environment. It's pretty fast paced, but whilst we are a small team, we're also pretty quick. So there's not a 42 gate process to get something approved or over the line. It's pretty much just a conversation in the office, and it's like, right, let's do it, let's go, let's start selling pea milk out of the milk milk crate on the road or whatever it might be, we'll kind of make ideas and execute them pretty quickly. And with regards to kind of the split to myself and Nick, was that the next question? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because we've worked together for the best part of a decade, if not more. The truth is, we've got a fairly kind of symbiotic relationship in that, really now I would say it's probably separated out more that Nick really owns the sales side of it, and I probably veer more towards the marketing. Right. And when we kind of share the innovation stuff on the MPD. But, because we're building up the team and it's not just us anymore, there's, some really fantastic people that have joined us. So, whilst Nick and I do share that and a lot of the investment and the investor stuff, Nick and I do take ownership of, and ultimately the book stops with us. Building that team out actually has meant, it's more about building people up from within and getting people to take ownership of their kind of respective areas of the business, which has been absolutely incredible because, before Nick and I weren't sleeping, we were trying to have to sleep at the office. There was just no time. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's been fantastic to build a really, really great team under us.
Absolutely. Do you sell internationally as well?
Yes, we do actually. We do. So we've got some really big plans for where we're kind of going next. But currently we are shipping to places like Sweden or Malaysia or Ireland, just all over the globe, or South Africa. In fact, we started shipping to recently. So absolutely, we started to kind of make inroads to build Mighty's presence out. Obviously, dairy alternatives all over the world, fortunately, are absolutely exploding. More and more cropping up every day. So it's been a product that's been received really well in all corners of the globe so far.
Absolutely. And in terms of basis of this dairy alternative milk, do you think you will stick to pea, or do you think you will venture also in other bases?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a brand, we've started to transition more towards Mighty, and whilst using yellow split peas is a large part of what we do, we're probably not just going to be the pea milk guys. There's a lot more that Mighty can be and is becoming. With all our products, we use the pea protein to make sure that we match cow's milk on, protein content. But if we look at things like our barista milk, which contains coconut cream and oats, we are starting to venture out into other areas, and that will probably become a big part of what we do. I can't reveal all the full details here because the MPD guys will shoot me if I reveal too much. But we do,
secrets. Sure.
Yeah, we do have something really special lined up for the end of the year, which is probably something no one else in this category or space has seen yet. So I won't say too much more because I will get shouted at. But we've got some cool stuff on the way.
Very, very interesting. Can't wait to see what that is. Now I really can't wait.
We'll send you samples, absolutely.
Thank you. I would love that. Can you tell us something more about the fundraising rounds that you raised to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done quite a few now, I think. We kind of started off like most startups do with one pretty much angel investor who backed us from that first initial round all the way to this one, who we have a massive kind of debt and gratitudes towards. And we've done, I think, maybe 4 or 5 now. And it's obviously raising money is quite a learning curve if you've never done it before. There's lots, if you're a founder or a startup, that you have to consider. Everything from making sure you get the legals right to, valuing your company and dilution and what that means. And it's just a whole world. And one thing I think we've learned, and a lot of other founders have said to us, is that raising money is a full-time job. And there's a lot of truth in that, especially kind of the bigger you get, the more you have to fund, the more you scale. It's a really big part of what a founder does. And of course, it's no matter if someone gives you £250 or £250,000 or £2 million, whatever it is, you have a responsibility to that person to make sure, or that organization to make sure that you perform, because, when you take other people's as a business, there's a lot of responsibility to it. And you kind of, people celebrate doing these huge fundraisers, and it is fantastic. But you have to remember, you're also giving away some of your business to do that. So whilst it's important, and it's especially important if you want to scale fast, it's not so much about, oh, look how much money I've raised. It's more about actually, what are the success metrics behind what we're doing? Are consumers loving our product? How are our, sales doing? How, as a team, as a culture, how are we doing? So, investing and the investment side of it is huge. It underpins most startups. But yeah, what I guess one thing I definitely say is don't always be too focused on trying to raise huge amounts of money. Try and be smart with the money that you raise. Every time you raise money, I mean, ideally you should have, from the next milestone, have ticked a number of boxes from where you tried to get for the last one, implemented that money correctly, and ultimately, every business aims to, if not become profitable, then at least get to that break-even point. So, yeah, it's important that you are kind of having goals and measuring yourself whenever you're raising money, and making sure that each round actually, have we got further along? Have we, and of course, like you probably make mistakes, and you'll probably spend some money somewhere that didn't work out as well, and that's just part of the learning curve. But absolutely, having goals and metrics behind raising that money is vital.
Absolutely. And for you, the investments came mainly from crowdfunding, right? Or did you have some big institutional investor that also contributed some strategic advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off with kind of an angel investor, and then we did a crowd fund, and then the last few rounds have really been kind of institutional.
Right.
So fairly large entities kind of backing Mighty, and with each of those things, be it an angel investor, be it a crowd fund, or be it a VC or venture capital money, whatever it might be, they each come with their own kind of upsides and downsides. Obviously, the scrutiny gets much more intense, and the due diligence much more intense the further up you go.
Sure.
We've kind of, I guess we've kind of been through it all along those steps. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, as a full-time job, as you were saying.
Exactly.
I know you are now part of the Tesco Incubator Program. Definitely a great company. Some other super interesting brands like Nimble, we had a few weeks ago on the show, actually, Dr. Willis, and other great ones. Can you tell us a bit more about the program? How did you get into it? What activities and support, for example, are you receiving?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one that I won't take any credit for. Is the truth. This is really, Nick, my brother and co-founder, was the one that really pushed to get us on that, and did a fantastic job in doing so. And I know that him and the sales guys have been really leading the charge on the Tesco Incubator Program. But it's been absolutely amazing. Tesco are a huge retailer, and they can, put your brand into a large number of stores and really kind of change your business overnight. So to have a close relationship with Tesco, to get that level of support and advice and strategy, and to be on a scheme like that alongside really cool brands from the past, like I don't know, Grays or Propercorn or whoever it might be, is absolutely incredible. But as a kind of support function to a disruptive kind of incubator brand like Mighty, it's been a absolutely game changing.
What kind of activities or what kind of, I suppose, I don't know, meetings you have with them? How does it look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's at all levels. To be honest with you, it's discussing your MPD for the year. It's discussing how you're going to implement. Discussing the kind of data that you receive and who your customers are. Just a whole world of insights into how to really do a fantastic job at retailing your product, which is kind of the support the Tesco Incubator scheme provides. Typically, as I kind of mentioned at the start, you're fighting for airtime with your buyer. You might, if you're lucky, get to see them once every 6 months, probably even less over the past year or so. And the Tesco Incubator scheme is completely opposite to that. It's about a complete kind of partnership, the level that these huge companies normally get, who have, joint business plans and what have you. But you kind of get that interaction with Tesco as a smaller disruptor brand. And to a brand like Mighty, that's just been invaluable.
I was wondering if you could give some indication on what could be different challenges at different stages of a company. I understand your company is still relatively young, obviously. But what were some challenges that you found during, along the way, and how did those change with you growing and with scaling and the different phases of the company so far?
Absolutely. I mean, if talk about the challenges, how long have you got? bore you to tears with this one. No, there's been at every stage there's different challenges. You just starting it and it's just yourself has entirely different challenges to when you've kind of got a team and you're needing to build a culture. I suppose really kind of obvious things to say, but I think most founders probably have to have it is resilience. No matter what stage you're at, you have to have confidence and a little bit of ego, but not too much in yourself to succeed. It's absolutely vital. You have to believe in what you're doing, because in a startup and as a founder, you're going to have, whereas maybe in past roles for me, speaking from experience, life can be much more, living in the middle and it's not too up and down. With a startup, the highs are the highest highs and the lows are the lowest lows, because it's, so extreme and it's your business and it's your baby that you've set up. So resilience is absolutely key. Learning about your product, and it sounds like an obvious one to say, but inside out. So everything about your competitors, everything about who buys your product, everything about where you sell it. Just knowing your whole world inside out, which naturally does happen over time, I found to be absolutely essential into, us starting to get some really great traction. I would say is an important one, and just all the other things, such as, when you get a bit further along building a team, that comes with its own kind of complexities. You have to establish a culture, you have to get in the right people, you have to decide what kind of company you want to be. They're all really, really big ones, because ultimately, we always talk about, founders have done this, founders have done that. And whilst that's true to an extent, it's the team, it's the wider team that will actually, get your company to that next level. And it's the people that you bring on board for the journey. So establishing a fantastic culture with great people, I would say, is, especially that's something we're going through now, an absolutely key learning.
In terms of the culture, how would you describe it? How is the culture at Mighty?
Yeah, I mean, so it's an interesting one, really, in that, having come from quite a corporate background like Mondelez, so Cadbury's, or, everyone else who's come here from other places, be it, Holland & Barrett, Boots, wherever, it's obviously, it can be sometimes quite a culture shock when you move from that big entity to a smaller kind of company, especially if it's around, 20 people, in that there's not loads of barriers, there's not loads of people, it's not as segmented, so there's a lot of crossover in your roles. I say as a culture we are all quite entrepreneurial. Nick and I are not of the philosophy that we want to micromanage people or anything like that. I think there's nothing worse. You just need to trust, you have to trust in people to do the job that you've kind of set out for them, and if you treat people well, normally they'll treat you well and treat your business exactly how you want. Ultimately, no one will bleed as harder for your business as yourself, as you'd expect, and that's the way it should probably be. But treating people right is absolutely essential to getting the most out of people. And I think, some companies get that absolutely spot on, and sometimes companies miss the mark. But in a startup, I'd say it's something to really focus on.
And in terms of hiring the people, how did you go about it in the sense of different positions? So which ones did you hire first, and which ones did you focus later on? How did you go about building the team?
Yes, a good question. For some reason, the first hire we ever made, I think, was Nina, who is now our sustainability and community manager.
Right. Interesting.
She was. So the first hire we made was kind of a social media manager, which was interesting. And also Nina kind of put the website together for us, so she was kind of doing loads of different bits and bobs. Is the truth. I don't know why that was kind of the first one that we thought to make. You'd think maybe sales or marketing or something, but she's been absolutely fantastic for the business, and she's still with us now. She's been first employee, absolutely brilliant for us, and gets stuck into everything. And then it was really just about, well, actually, now we've got a bunch of major retail listings. What support do we need there? And actually, we've got kind of to really raise awareness. How do we need to build the marketing team? And suddenly, our e-commerce is really starting to take off. So how do we build out that team? And it's really just it probably sounds a bit reactive, because I guess that's what it was, but it was more about building the team out as the problems arose.
Sure.
We didn't just kind of go, we're going to hire 15 people and hope for the best. It was more about, actually, let's focus on this now and this now and this now. One thing I think we probably could have got better, and I guess lots of founders will think this, is hiring a team a lot sooner. So beginning to hire people way quicker. And there's always an element of control when it's your business, it's your baby. You don't always want to hand over the reins, but ultimately, as I say, like, you have to trust in people. So I think, and I know a few founders have said this, building a team quicker, if we could go back, is something we would have done, because Nick and I have had far too little sleep in the last 12 months.
You touched a lot of very interesting points. I just wanted to go quickly back to the innovation side of things, the NPD. How do you tackle that? As in, where do you get ideas from? I guess, is there a process that you follow?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mix and match process. I know that sounds a bit ambiguous in that, obviously you can see what your category's doing. You can see things like, oh, actually barista milks are doing really well. We don't try and pay too much attention to what any of our competitors are doing, because I think, Mighty as a brand is quite innovative, and it's quite, exploratory in the directions we're willing to go. So we don't try and just, we'd never just do a Me Too product. We'd never just say, oh, we'll just launch an almond milk, or we'll just, launch a coat. We'll never do that. So for instance, we, oat milk's in insane growth. It's, growing at over 100% year on year. I mean, every man and his dog's trying to launch an oat milk, just a normal, but to us, we were never just going to do that. So we kind of took, well, what is Mighty? We took the great nutrition, we took the fantastic taste, we took kind of the natural ingredients, and went, well, what would our spin on oat milk be? So we have a protein oat milk, which, for instance, most oat milk has 0 grams of protein in a single 250ml glass, and we have 8 grams, so the same as cow's milk. And then it was, okay, so actually we're solving a new problem in the oat milk category. And, as far as I know, we're still the only protein oat milk out there that you can get in places like Sainsbury's and Tesco. But it's just that whole process of, well, what if our innovation, how are we going to get to it? Number one, it can never be a Me Too product. Number two, what is our brand and what makes sense for our consumers? And then number three, actually kind of getting in a lab with the super fantastic lab technicians and NPD technologists we have, and going, right, what can we cook up and how can we do it? And we'll say to them, look, here are the bonkers ideas we've got. And they'll go, well, here's reason 1, 2, and 3 why that definitely won't work. And eventually you end up meeting somewhere in the middle where you do get something, really great, and they kind of bring it to life and scale it. So that's probably a bit of an ambiguous answer, but that's typically how most of our NPD has tended to go.
Very, very interesting. I was wondering, in terms of your entrepreneurial journey, if you have always wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a great question. Everyone always asks us that. I'm always a bit flummoxed by it, because I think, does anyone, maybe some people out there who are like 9-10 years old, like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But I think for us, actually, it wasn't that. It was more, well, I suppose it's interesting, actually. We've always been, other than our first corporate jobs, we've always done our own businesses. So I guess we've always liked that freedom element to us has been really important, building our own culture, and, building kind of, it sounds super cheesy, but a dream and a mission that you really believe in has always been important to Nick and I. So yeah, I guess from that perspective, it's always been, we're gonna be entrepreneurial in what we do. But I think there's part of me, definitely at times, has thought, God, I wish actually, it would have been easier if I was much more happier to kind of be part of a different company and work for someone else and all the benefits that come with that. But unfortunately, I think the way that we're kind of programmed and built is that we want to kind of do it for ourselves, and we want to scale it. And we are quite ambitious, as I know all entrepreneurs are. And, there's some great sides to being an entrepreneur and some tricky ones too. So I don't think either side is right, being an entrepreneur versus, being a colleague and working for someone. I think there's pros and cons to both is the truth.
Absolutely. As a founder, who do you turn to for advice? It's great because you have your brother. Do you have someone else or some community, for example, that you turn to for advice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a bunch of different things. Firstly, we do talk to other founders. And I think one thing I'd recommend for any startup or, challenger brand is try and talk to other founders. For instance, Nick and I, you can always reach out to us if you ever wanted to just talk about business, because we do that with other people. And it can be quite a lonely journey, entrepreneurship, especially if you've never kind of launched a business before. So speak to other founders, and you'll quickly realize actually all the problems you have are shared across the board. They're not really normally unique to your business. They might be different in some ways, but overarchingly people will share the same problems. So to talk to other founders would be one. I'd say the second one would be I think we've been really lucky in our investors in that we've got some absolutely fantastic kind of mentors who have helped and advised us, and granted us access to opportunities that as little old 2.5-year-old Mighty would have never had, which has been absolutely paramount. And then the really obvious ones like our mum and dad for both Nick and I were super encouraging of us being entrepreneurial and trying our own thing. They never encouraged us to play it safe. So I know that kind of plays into it. So talk to other founders. If you're fortunate enough to get some really great investors and mentors in your corner, that's a huge asset. And for me and Nick personally, I know that family plays a big part.
And I really like this idea of the whole family somehow involved.
Oh, it's the best. I mean, it's the best because family will tell it how it is. There's no
exactly.
they'll just tell you straight, which is what you want sometimes in business.
Absolutely. Do you have a motto or a principle that you run the company by, but also that you live by?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ones. I mean, one that's kind of a more corporate one, I suppose you'd say, that we have Mighty for You and the Planet too, and that's the idea that all the products we make have to be nutritionally smart and super sustainable. So Mighty for You and the Planet too would be kind of a huge one. Where, I know Nick and I talk a lot about The Obstacle is the Way, which is a really fantastic book. I don't know if you've ever read it or heard of it, but the whole premise of it talks about, it's all about resilience really, and just goes through people in impossibly tricky situations or difficult situations. And actually, it's not about avoiding obstacles and resistance. It's about understanding that that's the way forward. So we talk about the obstacle is the way a lot, which has been really helpful. I'd say, on a more personal note, that one, and a more corporate note, Mighty for You on the Planet too. You
mentioned resilience quite a bit. And in your experience so far, apart from resilience, what else do you think it takes to be a food entrepreneur and really build a brand in this sector?
Apart from resilience, that's a great question. You need to be okay to, this is super obvious, but you need to be okay to fail. I keep hearing that a lot lately, that the most successful people fail the most, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. You're going to get things wrong starting a business. You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to go right, and you have to be completely okay with that. So getting things wrong is an absolutely huge part of being an entrepreneur, and accepting that. And failure is not final, in the sense that, like, you'll come back. If you're someone that's scared to make mistakes and scared to fail, like, entrepreneurship might not be for you, because it's actually a big part in how you succeed. I'm bloody still getting things wrong every other day here. So, but it's okay. That's part of it. And everyone that works here will get things wrong. That's the way it is. So not being afraid to fail would definitely be high up that list, I think, of other advice alongside resilience.
That's a very, very good point. Of course, if you never try anything, you won't ever fail, but you will be stuck where you started. Basically, you will never move forward. So it's a very, very good piece of advice. Can you maybe share, if you want, a failure that turned into some opportunity or some achievement?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I suppose a really good one is the barista milk we've made. This is the second iteration of it. So we made one the first time around, which was in the old packaging. It was a slightly different recipe, but we made thousands and thousands and thousands of cartons. A huge kind of expense, and we plan to launch it in the coffee trade, and we plan to launch it in the coffee trade around March 14th, 2020. Yeah, exactly. So we made all this production. We invested in loads of marketing. We were going absolutely huge on this kind of coffee launch. And then, of course, the world shut down and all the coffee shops shut within a week. And actually we went, oh God, like, what are we going to do here with all this stock? I mean, at the time it was absolutely, desperate and really tricky. And it was, this is a complete disaster. But actually, the truth is, it's given us 12 months to go back, completely remake the product, put it in new packaging. The product we've now got inside is 10 times better. It's just overarchingly a much better product and execution. And now is the right time, as the world starts opening up, for us to go back at it. So what initially was, a complete disaster actually has allowed us to go back to the table, get it right, as it probably should have been. And, the initial kind of reviews and sales on it have been really fantastic. So, I guess that's an example of we made a mistake. We picked the wrong time, but fortunately, it's kind of hopefully worked out okay.
Absolutely, and that's fantastic. This ability to reinvent and to react other impacts of COVID on your business.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was, I suppose, especially in those first few months, it was terrifying, wasn't it? And that no one really knew what it was, and everyone was, panic buying. We actually saw, supermarkets limiting the number of cartons of milk we could sell because basically it was just getting cleared off shelf because people were panic buying. So from a cash flow and supply chain perspective, that was pretty difficult to contend with. And then, of course, working remotely. And so what's interesting is we kind of went into lockdown with no team and, came out of lockdown with like triple or quadruple the distribution and a full team. So it's been a really strange kind of journey for us in that, a lot of the company has been built throughout a lockdown. Yeah. So we've had to just, I think as most people have, just get on with it and accept that, it is what it is and we have to just keep moving. But it was pretty worrying in those first few months to be like, oh my God, are we going to survive? What's this going to do for investment? But fortunately, everyone stuck by us, consumers have stuck by us. And, I think we've walked out the other side largely unscathed, fortunately.
That's fantastic to see how you came out stronger on the other side. Very, very impressive. And I'm glad to hear that. So one last question before I let you go, Tom. If our listeners want to interact with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you just send me a mail to tom@mightyp.co.uk, so tom@mightyp.co.uk. I'm absolutely always happy to chat with any of the founders, whatever it might be, if it's business related, if it's kind of, emotional or mental related, because I know how tricky it can be. I always try and chat to other founders about it, and I'm always happy to have anyone reach out and speak to me if they wanted to.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. This was really, really interesting. And thank you so much for your time. I'm sure it will be very useful for a lot of other founders that are listening.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.